Hello, hello, and welcome to Fine, I'll Talk About It, the podcast where we say the quiet parts out loud. Real talk, straight to the point, no fake positivity. I'm your host, Danielle Young, and today I'm joined by Laura Martinez, the Neuro-Shamanic Healer. Laura is an author and speaker who blends neuroscience with shamanism. She owns The Sacred Life, a private practice dedicated to deep healing and transformation. And on today's episode, we are talking about the integration of neuroscience, mental health, and shamanism, and why it's important today. Laura, welcome to Fine, I'll Talk About It.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love the title of your podcast. I think everybody can relate to that title.
Yeah, I get a lot of compliments on it all the time. So I'm glad people like it. It fits.
It does, yes. Exactly. I think it's going to fit what we're going to talk about too today.
Yes, absolutely. It's been fitting for basically every recording that I've done so far, which is really great. I mean, it's working out very well. But why don't you start off just by telling us a little bit about you, your work, and kind of lead us into what exactly the Neuro-Shamanic Healer is?
All right. So, my work, what I do is I blend neuroscience, shamanism, and mental health. And when we do that blend, we're able to work on the mind, the body, and the spirit. To me, the neuro-shamanic healer is a person that is helping the client connect to themselves so they can find their own answers. The whole practice of shamanism is allowing the person to connect to them, connect to their soul, and find what's in alignment for them. So I am not here to give them advice. I'm not here to necessarily do talk therapy. I'm here to give them experiences where they can connect to themselves and they can find the answers to their own problems or to their own challenges.
Got it. Okay, so let's just start off with talking a little bit about, because I feel like people hear shaman and they think of this person standing in the middle of the desert on a rock. This figure, what exactly is shamanism?
That is a good question and a great place to start because a lot of people get a little demystified by that name and they get a little freaked out about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I will say that shamanism isn't a religion, it's not necessarily a spirituality, it's more of a practice or a method. And what that method is you have all of the resources, you have nature, you have animals, you have your breath, you have your heart energy, you have spirit guides, you have angels, whatever you believe in, whatever your resources are, we connect to those so you can find the way in your own path. And so in shamanism, time is not linear. There is no past, there is no future. It's actually a spiral. And when time is on a spiral, it means that everything is happening at the same time. So I'll give you an example of what that means. If I want to work on my future self and I want to manifest a future self that is abundant and, higher knowing and wise, I can access that person now. I can also go back in the past and I can heal wounds or trauma from the past to now. Everything's kind of happening on a continuum where we can heal ancestral wounds from the past, we can heal ourselves now. And so when we have that belief, we know that we have access to everything in our tapestry of who we are. So shamanism really is the belief that you can heal yourself. Just said very simply, we can get into different practices such as shamanic journey, finding soul wounds, you collecting data from your past. A lot of the times I'm taking clients into a trance state so they can connect to themselves and so they can find the answers to themselves. So a lot of my work is taking people into a deep state of themselves.
And can everybody practice shamanism, or is this a very specialized, you have to be part of a lineage type of thing? Like, how does that work exactly?
Well, I try not to put my business into other people's practices. For me, I am part of a lineage of shamanic practitioner. My great grandma was a shaman, or in Mexico, a curandera. And so she was a medicine woman. And a lot of my gifts come from her. I can feel her alive inside of me when I'm practicing. However, I'm definitely not one to say, well, that person shouldn't be practicing shamanism. Or I really do believe that if it's alive inside of you and you feel called to do this kind of practice, then it's something that needs to be studied, right? In shamanism, I will say that there are shamans across the globe. That's one of the magical things about shamanism is you can find it literally in every part of the world. And so there's different types of practices and different heritages. And so my heritage comes from Spain, and it's actually Basque shamanism is the type of shamanism that I practice. And that comes from my family lineage. But if somebody else, let's say, is from Africa and they have shamanism there, the way that I practice and the way they practice might be completely different. And then you also think about how all of these narratives and stories and healing rituals, they've been passed down from generation to generation. Like when I was a child, and I would get sick, my mom would do a limpieza with the egg, with a huevo. And have you ever heard of an egg cleansing?
Yeah. Yep, I have.
Cool.
I never knew what it was though, but I've always heard of it and I've always heard different conflicting things about yes, you should do it and no, you should not do it. Continue, please.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that because that's exactly what I mean is, the way my mom did it is she would get an egg from, the refrigerator and she would pray over me. And the way she did it, she would do the sign of the cross because I grew up in a Christian home. And she would do that all over my body and she would focus on the area that I felt sick. So let's say I had a stomach ache. So she would concentrate on that area and then she would break the egg and she'd put it in a cup and then you let that cup sit overnight and the energy from your body is trapped in the egg. So you can see it in the egg. And I remember sometimes when I was sick, the egg would go gray the next day
Oh,
and it was all the energy. Yeah, yes. And so I know it's wild, right? But
yeah.
just because my family lineage did it that way doesn't mean, oh, you're doing it the wrong way because your ancestral line did it a different way, right? It's all up to our interpretation. And that's what makes healing so beautiful is we really find what tools align with us.
My question though is why an egg? Like what's the significance of the egg?
Well, they are, an egg is a part of a living creature, a living being, which, some people work with plants. I work with plants in my own practice. And so that's just a living being that's decided to, okay, this is what we're going to take and we're going to transform that energy. And since it's malleable or liquid, you're able to transform that energy quite easily, right? And you're able to see that transformation in the egg. And so I don't necessarily do egg cleansings on my clients. It's just something that, I'll do with my stepdaughter or something like that. It's more of a family home sort of thing, right?
Yeah,
But my point of that though is, everybody's different and we can kind of transform these healing practices based on what is in alignment for us.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and there is no right or wrong way in healing. I feel like it's all individualized and it's all what personally works for us. And I feel like there's a lot of this I'm right, you're wrong mentality when it comes to wellness and healing and all of this stuff. So it sounds to me like shamanism is very spiritual, it's very grounding. Now, how do we take that and combine it with neuroscience, which is very scientific, it's very analytical, it's very logical? Like how do we mesh the two?
That is such a great question. I love that question. It's actually, for me, the neuroscience part is an interpretation of what happens in that session, in that spiritual session, right? So I love examples because it's just the best way to follow, right? So I had a client one time and he had never done a shamanic journey before and he was very skeptical. In fact, when I work with a client, I always ask them, okay, what box do you want me to work in? I can work in my mental health box. I have a master's in clinical mental health, so I know traditional therapeutic modalities. I can work in my shamanic box, or I can work in my neuroscience box. And I can stay in each box. It's very hard for me to do. I'd rather play in all three sandboxes, but I can stay in one if you want me to. And he was one of the ones that was like, please just stay in the neuroscience and the mental health. Don't dip into that shamanic crap, he told me. And I
Thanks,
said,
dude.
okay. I said, I'll keep my feathers away from you and I'll be professional and, and so we did
Yeah.
that for a little while and we kind of got to this plateau. And I'm sure you know this from working with clients. Sometimes you get to a plateau.
Yeah.
And once you get to that plateau, it's like, okay. And I told him, I said, you know what? I really think that we need to dip into that third box that you don't want to go into. And we had built a really good rapport by then, Danielle, where he was going to pretty much do what I had recommended. And so we went ahead and dipped into that shamanic box and we did a shamanic journeys because I said, I only have one shot with this guy with shamanism. I'm going to knock his socks off and try to do something
I'm
that he's
pulling
ready
out
for. And
all
he
the
was ready for it.
stops.
And it was ethical because he was totally ready. He had all the coping skills. He was ready to go to that next level. And he opened his eyes and he said, "What the hell was that?" And I said, "It was good, wasn't it?" And
Nice.
he said, "Wow." He said, "That was really profound." And he was one of these people that needed that scientific explanation of what that actually was. And so for me, neuroscience is kind of like this tool where I can explain to that client, okay, well, your brainwave state paired with my drumming, which took you into a theta brainwave state, which got you to release your inhibitions and go into this high creativity, high imaginative place inside of yourself. It allowed you to also connect to your subconscious state, your psyche, and what was there. And what we did is we pulled what you were ready to work with, and it came up to the surface. And when it came up to the surface, your reticular formation, which is a part of your brain that, let's say that simple explanation, let's say that I'm looking for a car, and the car that I'm looking for is a black Honda Civic, right? Then every black Honda Civic I'm going to see on the road is going to be out there. So when we're journeying, that part of our brain gets activated where if I know that there's something that I need to work on, that's probably something that's going to be pulled up to the surface because there's a part of my brain that acknowledges this is where I need to heal, right? If I constantly get into arguments with my husband over something and I know that there's something that he's touching on, that might be something that gets pulled up to the surface. So he needed that science explanation. So for me, yes, I work with neurotherapy and biofeedback, and I have different cognitive approaches that are rooted in neuroscience. But I love being able to explain what the hell that was.
Yeah.
It's so helpful to me.
Right. No, and it's super helpful for the client too. I mean, I'm huge in education of bodies and systems and anatomy and because the more you know, the it's powerful. When you know that innately about your body, knowledge is power. So I'm all about educate educate people on why things are happening and explain this is the process.
Yeah. It also gives them kind of a context of what is happening inside of them. So it allows them to hold on to it a little bit firmer because they get that education and that context of, okay, this is not completely out of left field. This is something that I can continue to work on or continue to believe in. This wasn't just a thing that happened by chance.
Right. Well, it helps too when you can explain it. I feel like the practitioners who are like, well, I don't know why that just happened, but it just happened. Accept it. Go with it. Just believe it. And by the way, here's your total. I mean, it's like if you can't explain to someone why something is happening in their body, maybe something needs to be additionally added into your practice, is what I'm saying. You
Absolutely.
know,
Knowledge is power. It
yeah.
really is.
Yeah, for sure. So what made you decide to put all three together? Like, did you start off with one and then said, okay, this works. Now I'm going to add in this piece? Like, what was your journey from A to B?
That's a great question. And actually, they kind of just came up by chance. At the time, after I graduated college, I started working at a treatment center, a substance abuse treatment center, and it was a popular treatment center, so we were full a lot of the time, and it was a private pay treatment center. And so I say that because we really had the ability to be super creative with our clients and their treatment, and we were able to give them outside of the box treatment, which is really cool. So at the time, I was the director of the Neuroplasticity Center, and I have my background, my education in neuroscience. My undergrad is in neuroscience. And so I was running that treatment center. And at the time, I was visiting Costa Rica. And by chance, I stumbled upon working with a shaman couple. And by me doing this work with them, it just was this huge aha, Danielle. I mean, my first experience that I had, I saw this huge peacock, and I wasn't on anything. There was no substances with that one, with that particular journey. At the time, I really was a scaredy cat with taking psychedelics or any kinds of drugs. I was very wet behind the ears, and I was like kind of anti-drugs at the time, or at least psychedelics. I don't really say psychedelics are drugs necessarily, but I wasn't dipping into that at the time. And so I
Yeah.
had just had this very raw experience with just came from pure consciousness, and really a beautiful experience for me. And I cried and I wept, and I had this huge emotional release. It was like years had just been stuffed, and I felt lighter and happier than I ever felt. And I thought, well, shit, I really need to bring this over to my clients and have them do this. They've got to experience this. And so I asked the couple to train me, and they said they would. And they said that they couldn't charge me, though, that they could only do this for free. And so the way that I paid them
Darn.
back is, I know, that's how you know.
Sign me up.
I
Yeah.
know. It was beautiful. I mean, even now that I think back on it, it's just like, wow, I was given this
What a
life
gift.
changing opportunity that would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But they refused to get paid. Weren't, of course, everybody needs money to live, but they didn't believe that sharing that gift with others needed to get payment in that way. They
Wow.
said that the payment that they would receive is by me spreading it to the world and giving it to
Mm,
others,
paying it forward.
paying it forward.
Wow. What a gift.
It was. And so I kept going back and kept bringing it into treatment. And what I saw in the treatment center was, oh my gosh, so much healing, so much deep experiences, so many people meeting their deceased relatives, so many people going back to their inner child and experiencing even past life experiences. And I had a client that had coffee with Jesus Christ. I mean, it was just beautiful. Like,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And the treatment team at the treatment center, because we all met every morning to talk about every client. They said, "What are you doing with the clients?" We had a process group this morning, and we had people talking about how they were bawling like a baby, and they had coffee with Jesus, and what is happening? What are you doing? And I kind of kept it hush hush because I was the director of the facility, so I could kind of do what I wanted. And I was just kind of experimenting in a way that I knew was good for them. And I had really good outcomes, but I wasn't announcing it necessarily to anybody. And so it got revealed, and it was just, they supported it. They were like, keep doing what you're doing. This is wonderful for the clients. And I had a ton of support. And so it kind of just grew from there. And they actually paid for me to get my master's. So I went ahead and went back to school.
Nice.
And that's when the mental health part came back in. And so when I left that treatment center, I was so grateful. And I decided to start my own private practice. And it was time to spread my wings and fly. And so I decided, I'm going to create this private practice where I'm doing the same sort of concept with the clients, except in private practice. So it's a little bit different, right? You have to go a little bit slower in private practice than going like bam in treatment, where you have all these clinicians and all the support in this incubated setting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it manifested to what it is now.
Wow. That's super interesting. Entering in at one point and then getting to where you are now, and that like profound shift with all of the clients that you've worked with. That's incredible. When you talk about a journey, what does that typically look like? Like when you combine all three into a session, what does that entail? Can you walk me through that a little?
Yeah, yeah. So if I'm working with a client that I've never worked before, I want to make sure that they have the skills to handle any deep subconscious experiences they might have. And so when I start working with a client, we start with shamanic work, but I would never start with giving them a shamanic journey because I want to make sure that they're ready to handle anything that comes up. So really the first step is figuring out what kind of coping skills they have, how connected, how aligned are they to themselves, what kind of lifestyle do they live, or do they have a routine? And teaching them how to breathe is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Teaching them how to connect, the breath is the anchor to the soul. And so sometimes I'll spend a session on teaching clients how to breathe, how to connect with themselves, how to feel their body. There's some clients that are just so disconnected from their somatic experiencing in their body and they just kind of leave their body all the time. So
Mhm.
it depends on the client, really. But I always want to make sure that whatever we're doing in the shamanic sense, it's ethical to take them to that place. And that's where that mental health background really does help me to
Yeah.
get them to where they need to be. Sometimes we'll do like creating a container, a safe place, a spirit ally, just so they can have some context to fall back on if trauma does come up to the surface. And then after I feel like, okay, we've got a good foundation, this person really can connect to themselves and take care of themselves in the way that they need to, then we can move on to the shamanic work. And the shamanic journey itself, it's, a person laying down on the floor and they have a blindfold on usually, and they're in I have a yoga studio in my home that I work out of. So I bring them over and they'll lay down and it's very comfortable, very safe setting. And we always start with an intention. So what's your intention for this session? Okay, I want to connect to my inner child. Okay. Even though that's their intention, they might not always go there. Your subconscious is going to take over and show you what you need to see. That's the very cool part.
Yeah.
And so we set the intention and then I'll start taking them into a trance state. So a trance state it's not hypnotherapy, but it's very similar. In shamanism, a trance state is getting to that place between being fully awake and being fully asleep. So if you know brainwaves, it's that alpha brainwave zone.
Yep.
So we want to get them into that alpha zone where they start to get into that meditative state and then get them to theta. And theta, we can get there through drumming. And so if you drum consistently, your brain's going to pair with that drumming. And so I'll start with a guided meditation where we're connecting to our body. And then after that, I'll take them in shamanism, there's three different realms, there's three different worlds. And this is the shamanism that I know from my lineage, right? Might be different with other shamanic practices, but there's a lower realm, a middle realm, and an upper realm. Each realm is different. And so what I do in my lineage is I have them decide what realm they need to go to when they're there. Some other shamanic practices, they'll say, we need to take you to the lower realm. To me, I think the soul already knows where to go. So I take them to an opening, and that opening can be above you, in front of you, or below. And then I have them access that opening. So let's say that opening is a volcano pit, or it could be a body of water, or it could be a staircase going up. Wherever that opening is, they need to go there. And then I do the drumming. So once we start the drumming, then they start to dip into those theta brain waves and they have an experience all on their own. Now, spirit will call me sometimes to use my rattle, to use my sound bowls, to maybe I'm a master Reiki practitioner. So sometimes I'll even do Reiki on them while they're in a shamanic state. It just depends where spirit guides me to go. Sometimes spirit will say, no, they need to do a little bit more guided work. So I'll do a little bit more guided work. I just am following spirit. I'm in a trance state myself when I go into these states. And the way that spirit communicates to me is through images. And so yesterday I was working on a client and I had this image that one of her relatives had just deceased, and I felt a lot of grief from her belly. And so I said, did you, sometimes I'll ask questions during the journey too. Did you just have a relative that passed? And she goes, yes, I had a relative pass today. My aunt passed. And I said, okay, allow yourself to get in touch with that grief and feel it. And then I'm drumming and drumming and drumming, and she's releasing and releasing. So it can look like a whole lot of different ways and different avenues depending on what the client needs at that time. So that's the shamanic journey. And then, I could talk about a soul loss and what do we do with soul loss? What do we do to connect to our spirit animal? But that's kind of in a nutshell what we're looking at.
Got it. It sounds so fascinating. You're able to access those subconscious levels where trauma lives. And you and I have talked about this before, conventional talk therapy versus conscious versus subconscious healing, and why it is important to access the subconscious more than the conscious. It's my feeling that our ego gets in the way of subconscious. So when we allow and we go to those states of deeper consciousness, then we're opening up what actually is there and not what our ego wants to protect us from. And that allows it to just be cleared. Whereas talk therapy, it's great if it works for you. I personally, as someone who also loves neuroscience and loves talking about neuroplasticity, trauma does not live in the language centers of the brain. It lives in the body, and you can't access it through talk. So can you take us through what your work entails with the conscious versus the subconscious and why it's important to work with both? Because it is. We've got to give this a frame of reference and how that plays out in your client healing.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Talk therapy is really working with the conscious mind, which the conscious mind already knows the conscious mind. And sometimes if I'm having a client repeat their trauma from their conscious state, I'm actually, according to neuroscience, I'm actually creating a neural pathway that's stronger and deeper, which is not what we want to do. We don't want to reinforce the trauma. We don't want to make that pathway in the dirt bigger, right? Or deeper. And so the work that I do is, of course, we have to talk a little bit because we have to see what is in the conscious mind, what is located there, what do we think we're working with here. But a lot of times when I'm working with a client, the things that come up from the subconscious or the psyche are just as surprising to me as it is to them.
Mm,
It's like, oh man, although it resonates with them, they're surprised that that's what came up. And so that tells me that there was no connection. Well, let me rephrase. There's always a connection to it, whether we acknowledge it or not, but they didn't think that there was a connection to it. Right.
yeah.
And so, yeah. And so to me, when I'm taking somebody into a trance state, you're really losing touch with the ego. And I can tell you what that means by neuroscience. When we go into these trance states and we're in that theta brainwave form, there is a part in our brain, it's the DMNs, excuse me, the DMNs. That part of our brain is our ego state. That says, hi, I'm Laura Martinez. I'm the Neuro-Shamanic Healer and I like sushi, right? So that's the part of me that I know is my ego. And so my ego self is just what describes us as who we are in our human shell. When we're in a trance state and also when we're on certain psychedelics, the DMNs quiets. It almost goes down to the decibel of zero, which means we have no connection to our ego self. And you can see it. The person is there, they're laying on the mat and they're vulnerable. They're so vulnerable. And I get really emotional when I think about how somebody trusts me to that state to be that vulnerable in a room with me. I mean, that's to me is incredible that I have that amount of trust in a client.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be able to be a practitioner and a client and have that vulnerability between the two of you.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah. And so when you're in that vulnerable state and your ego is completely down, right? You're able to access these parts of ourselves that we wouldn't even acknowledge to ourselves. We wouldn't even admit to ourselves. Admitting that we need to heal certain parts of our life is really hard. Admitting that we're the jerk sometimes, or that it's our fault, or it's our problem, or it's our responsibility. That's hard stuff to do that because it's so much easier to point, you, when it's really like, nope, it's me. And
Yep.
so, talk therapy, I think we're coming from this defended place a lot of the times. And I've done therapy, talk therapy myself, and There was, at least at the beginning of my therapy experience, like in my teens, I remember being extremely defended about a couple things that my therapist said, and I was like, "No, that's probably not right."
Yeah.
She was right, you know?
Yeah.
So it's tough to get to those places. Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't want to admit it because what does it mean when we do admit it? What does it say about us? What are we admitting about ourselves in admitting to agreeing to what the therapist tells us?
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I heard, I haven't checked it out myself, but there's a thread on Reddit, and it's, "So I'm the a-hole," basically is the thread.
Yeah, oh yeah, you can cuss on here. Go for it. Real and raw. That's how we do it.
So the thread is, "So I'm the asshole." It sounds so much better
Yeah.
when you can say it. Yeah.
Yeah. Am I the asshole for this? Oh yeah, I love those posts. Those are
I need to check them out.
entertaining, by the way.
I need to go check that out. One of my clients told me about it because he said, "So I'm the asshole, Laura." And I said, "Yes, you are. You are the asshole."
Yeah, they're all about, so I'm the asshole if I did this one thing or didn't do this one thing. And it's like, well, yeah, you kind of are. But, there's always two sides to it, right? Just like conscious and subconscious. Like there's always two sides to it. And the way I always describe neuroplasticity to my clients is it's like, think of a road that's snow covered. It's like fresh snow. And if you keep driving down it, these ruts, they start to build tracks in the snow. Anyone who has ever driven in snow knows you stay in the ruts, you stay in the tracks, because if you veer off, you're going off the road. So you drive through what's already there, and it's just easier. That's the easier route. And then when you're bringing up that subconscious stuff, what's happening is those ruts are slowly getting a fresh layer of snow. And now the ruts are being filled in. And guess what? You can create new ruts, new path. You can go wherever you want to go, and you're not just being forced to drive down this one set of tracks. And that is
Yes.
so beautiful. Knowing that our body is capable of doing that, that our mind is capable of doing that, that is so incredible in itself.
Yeah. It is. It is. It's the focused attention of a human being is so expansive and so powerful, and we really don't know it. We don't acknowledge how powerful we are. There's a lot of things in the world that tells us we don't have power and make us, and I won't go into conspiracy today, but make us believe that we don't have any power, right? And
Right.
want to be in a state of powerlessness. And I don't mean the spiritual state of powerlessness. That's a different kind of powerlessness. But what I mean is we always are more powerful than what we give ourselves credit for. And the fact that I can have all of this focused attention, and in neuroscience, we say where our attention goes, neurons grow. That's so true. Yeah,
I love that.
exactly. So if I think,
Yes.
I'm the worst practitioner and I'm looking at evidence why I'm the worst practitioner, and then I'm going to be the worst practitioner. I'm going to
Right.
create, that is going to be my reality.
Confirmation bias. Yes.
Yes. Yes. And there's the neuroscience part of it, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look for it, you're going to find it. Yeah. If you look for it, you're going to find it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so it's important that I think in my practice, my mission is to help clients understand how powerful they are and to help them know how expansive they can be. I mean, now, even, I mean, in the field of epigenetics,
Mm,
we know that we can activate certain DNA codes within ourselves.
yeah.
DNA codes that maybe were not given from mom or dad. That's incredible. I mean, you're basically saying I can be whatever I want to be if I believe in it and I activate those certain neurons. That's insanely powerful.
Yeah. Science is cool. And that's the beauty of it is in one train of thought, in one practice. It's ever evolving like we are. And I don't think that they've even scratched the surface on what all is going on in our body.
No, I don't think we have even touched how much our subconscious mind can do, and how the movie out here that we're seeing, the life that we're living in, is a manifestation of us. If you want to know why you're attracting so many awful people in your life, you got to know that there's a frequency you're emitting out from your body that's attracting that. And so in my line of work in shamanism, a lot of it is understanding that you're responsible for everything that's out here, everything. And if you take 100% responsibility for everything that's out here, then it empowers you. A lot of people say, man, that sounds depressing. I'm like, well, it depends on what kind of life you're living. It's to some that might be empowering to say, man, yeah, this is the life I'm a creator and this is the life I've created. So yeah, a lot of my work is about empowerment.
Same. Yeah, I really focus helping, especially women, get out of that victim mentality because things are going to happen to us. We're not going to always understand why or know why, but it's changing our relationship to that, whatever that is, that's going to move us forward.
Yeah, yeah. And inner child work can be done in a way where we're taking care of our inner child now. When I do inner child work with a client and we're talking about their childhood, okay, well, but what did that little girl, that little boy, what did they need when you were going through that trauma? How
Yeah.
did you want to be supported? How did you want to be loved? Okay, you wanted to be loved that way? Okay, give yourself that now. Well, how do I give that to myself? I'm an adult. Well, think about this. What can you do for yourself that would allow you to receive that love? And we always can get there. So, yeah, I think it's important for us to not just regurgitate our past or our trauma, but to actually actively do something about it now. Because again, shamanism, it's a spiral of time. So I can access my inner child anytime I want to. It's there for me to heal. She's there for me to heal right now.
I love that concept that we're not just designated to one time period and time is not linear. It's just there, point.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful concept. And when I tell my clients that, it's a sigh of relief I get a lot of the times because they acknowledge that, oh, it's not gone. It's not lost. It's not, a lot of people think I've thrown my whole life away. And it's like, no, you can heal that part of your life now. And it will change the trajectory of your future and the forward momentum of your life. And so it's the best feeling in the world. And again, I know you can relate to this when you work with someone and they completely transform their life, they completely transform their perspective, and you see them in alignment with yourself, with themselves. And it's nothing that you've done as a practitioner. You've just kind of showed them how to align with themselves. You haven't told them what to do. You haven't told them how to live. They've all came up with this themselves. It's such a beautiful experience.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's for me the most beautiful experience in the world, it's pretty awesome. I was visiting my family this weekend and they're all real high achievers and um they have a lot of real estate and properties that they sell and stuff and my dad was saying, Laura, if I got you involved with this project, you'll never have to work again in your whole life. And I said, I want to work. I was defending. I want to work. I love to work, Dad. And he said, "Oh yeah, but that's rare. Not a lot of people feel that." I said, "I know, but I would do this work no matter what. I'm going to do this work until I'm that old shaman lady in the woods that has gray hair and a big old cape but doesn't shave anymore. That's me.
That's awesome.
Goals.
Yeah. Life goals. What are some final little nuggets of wisdom that you want to leave us with?
Let me see what spirit wants me to share. What's coming to me now that spirit wants me to share is about alignment. Alignment has been the kind of the theme of today. You know that you're out of alignment if you wake up and you're dreading life. You know you're out of alignment if you look at your watch constantly and you can't wait for the day to end. You know you're out of alignment if you don't feel satisfied with your job, with your occupation. You know you're out of alignment if you don't feel satisfied with the relationships you have. And so I'm going to encourage anybody that's listening to get into alignment. And it's so easy to get into alignment. People say, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot of work. And it's not actually. To get into alignment, you have to figure out, well, first you have to connect to yourself and you have to listen to yourself. You have to give yourself some space, some time, some quiet to figure out what you actually want. So often people are listening to the voice of others and what others tell them to do, or, oh, I should do this, even though I don't want to. And ask yourself this question. When I'm doing something, or when I'm being in a space, or when I'm existing somewhere, Does it take away from me or does it give me energy? If it gives you energy, you're in alignment. If it drains you, you're out of alignment. Okay. I think there's very few things that we need to do that take us out of alignment. And that's might be like paying our taxes, pumping gas into our car, the responsible things that we need to do to be adults, pay our bills. But
Yeah.
other than that, other than those few things, notice what's taking you into the energetic realm where you're feeling fired up and you have energy and what's draining you. That's the easiest way to see what's taking me out of alignment and what's in alignment. And once you do that, then you start matching and aligning with who you actually are. I have worked with clients who have left professional careers, like being a lawyer, because it's taking them completely out of alignment. And once they did that, although it was scary, man, they felt so much relief. Today, I want to inspire you to get into alignment and start figuring out what energizes you, what makes you content, what makes you happy.
Love it. That is really good advice. Thank you, Spirit, for that. And if people want to know more about you, find you, work with you, where's the best place that they can do that?
I would say right now, my Instagram is probably the best place to find me.
Okay.
My Instagram is the Neuro-Shamanic Healer. I also have a website. My website is www.theneuroshamanichealer.com. Also, I'm on Insight Timer. I'm actually the only Laura Martinez on Insight Timer. I'm very happy about that. There's usually a million of us out there. I'm so happy. It's like my territory. So you can find me on there, but please send me a message, a DM, or hit me up on my website and send me an email. I'd love to chat with you more.
Sounds great. And I will put all the links in the show notes.
Awesome, Danielle. Thank you so much for having me on today and taking the
Oh, thank
time.
you. Coming on. This was really, really great. So thank you for hanging out with us on Fine, I'll Talk About It. If today's episode got you thinking, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you want more real talk, more perspective shifts, and more finally someone said it moments, leave a quick review. It helps other people find the show. You can connect with me on Instagram at Inspired Action Wellness or my website, inspiredactionwellness.com.